You've held a magnet before. You already think you know what's going to happen. You bring two of them close, and something you can't see reaches out and pushes back. Flip one around, and suddenly they leap together like they were impatient the whole time. That feels normal, familiar, almost boring. But here's the problem. The moment you ask why that happens, something strange begins, not in the magnet, in you. Because a why sounds like a simple request, but it isn't. It's a demand for a story your intuition expects to hear, something mechanical, something you could picture, something that makes the universe feel polite, and magnetism refuses to do that. You can feel it clearly. You can measure it precisely. You can build an entire technological civilization on it, but the kind of explanation your brain wants never arrives. Not because we don't understand magnets, but because the question itself is quietly asking for something nature never promised to give. And once you see that, you don't just stop understanding magnets. You start questioning what understanding was ever supposed to mean. Let's slow this down and do something uncomfortable. Imagine you're holding two small bar magnets. Nothing fancy, no diagrams, just your hands. You bring them close. You feel a push. Not heat, not vibration, just resistance, as if space itself has decided to say no. Now stop. Don't explain it yet. Just notice what your mind immediately tries to do. It starts inventing pictures, invisible strings, compressed springs, little arrows flying back and forth. You don't choose these ideas. They show up automatically. Your brain needs something moving, something touching, something bumping into something else. So let's take those pictures away. Imagine there is nothing between the magnets, no air, no particles, no hidden gears, no medium at all, just empty space. You still feel the force. Okay. Maybe the force travels through space, you think fine. How fast? Instantly, gradually. Does it get tired halfway? You push the magnets closer. The force grows stronger. Pull them apart, it weakens. Now here's the trap. Your intuition quietly assumes that the magnet is doing something. Reaching out, sending a signal, grabbing the other one. So let's remove that too. Imagine the magnets are perfectly still. No motion, no change. Just sitting there. The force is still there. Nothing is happening, and yet something is happening. This is where it starts to feel wrong. Because every explanation you've ever trusted depends on change, on motion, on cause followed by effect. But magnetism doesn't wait for permission from time. Now try this. Imagine you've never seen a magnet before. You've lived your entire life pushing on tables, leaning on walls, walking on floors. Contact forces make sense to you. You touch something. It pushes back. Now for the first time you feel resistance without contact. Ask yourself honestly, would you call that intuitive? Or would you call it impossible? Here's the uncomfortable part. The only reason magnetism feels mysterious is because it breaks a rule your brain never agreed to question, that forces must come from touch, or motion, or something you can point to. But that rule was never written by nature. It was written by experience. And now the experience is failing you. So hold the magnets there for a moment longer, not asking what they're doing, not asking how they work. Just noticing that the universe is perfectly comfortable behaving in a way your intuition was never designed to accept. And that realization, that quiet mismatch between expectation and reality, is where the real trouble begins. At this point, most explanations try to rescue your intuition. They reach for familiar ideas. Maybe the magnets store energy. Maybe they're releasing something. Maybe there's a hidden tension like a stretched spring waiting to snap. But watch what happens when you test those ideas carefully. If energy were being used up, the magnet should weaken just by sitting there. They don't. If something were flowing out of one magnet and into the other, you should be able to block it. You can't. If magnetism worked like a push or a pull you already know, then distance would behave politely. Double the distance, half the effect. But it doesn't. The numbers don't cooperate with your expectations. So you try another move. You say, you see, fine, I want to ask what magnetism is. I'll ask what causes it. And now intuition really starts to collapse, because causes usually come before effects. They happen in time. But magnetism doesn't announce itself. It doesn't arrive late. It doesn't warm up. The force is simply there, fully formed the moment the magnets exist in that arrangement. No delay, no buildup, no visible process you can point to and say, that's the cause. You've lost your time lane. Then you notice something even worse. You've been treating space as empty, as a passive stage where things happen. But if empty space can push back, if it can store direction, strength, and structure, then space isn't empty at all, and now the failure is complete. Energy didn't save you. Motion didn't save you. Time didn't save you. Even nothing didn't stay nothing. Every mental shortcut you rely on to feel oriented has quietly stopped working, and you're left in an uncomfortable position. You're not confused because magnetism is complicated. You're confused because the universe is refusing to behave like the stories that made you feel safe understanding it. This is the lowest point, because whatever explanation comes next cannot feel familiar and cannot protect your intuition anymore. So if intuition won't help us, we need a different strategy, not a better picture, not a more vivid analogy, something quieter. Instead of asking what pushes, what we change the question. We stop asking what things do and start asking what things are allowed to do. Begin with space. You're used to thinking of space as a container, a box things sit in, empty, passive, uninvolved. But physics doesn't treat space that way. Space has directions, not just left and right, up and down, but possibilities. If you move an object, you don't just change where it is. You change how it's allowed to change next. That sounds abstract, so let's make it concrete. Imagine walking across a frozen lake. You step forward, fine. You step sideways, fine. But now imagine the ice is sloped in a way you can't see. Suddenly, certain directions feel easier than others. The ice didn't push you, it constrained you. That's the first shift. Magnetism isn't something reaching across space. It's space itself being shaped so that some motions are favored and others are resisted. Now add time. You think of motion as something that happens in time. But modern physics treats time as another direction, not special, just different. Every object is always moving, always. If it's not moving through space, it's moving through time. And it never stops doing both. There's a fixed total motion, and you can't increase it. You can only redirect it. This is the second shift. When something speeds up in space, it slows down through time. When it slows down in space, it moves faster through time. You don't notice this in daily life because the effect is tiny. But the rule is absolute. Now here's where magnetism quietly slips in. Magnetic forces don't add motion to objects. They redirect motion that already exists. They bend the allowed path through space and time. That's why nothing needs to start. Nothing needs to flow. Nothing needs to build up. The structure is already there. You place two magnets near each other, and the geometry of possible motion changes instantly. Not because a signal raced across space, but because the configuration itself defines what motions are allowed. This feels unsettling because we're used to thinking in terms of pushes and pulls. But physics prefers constraints. Now we reach the midpoint, the idea that locks everything together. There is a maximum speed at which causes can travel. Not because nature is slow, but because causality needs protection. If influences could arrive out of order, if effects could appear before causes, the universe would become inconsistent. So instead of letting that happen, nature enforces a rule. Everything reorganizes itself around that limit. Electricity, magnetism, space-time, they're not separate systems glued together. They are different faces of the same structure that keeps cause and effect intact. Magnetism exists because electric forces must obey that speed limit. It's not optional. It's not an extra feature. Once you demand that electricity work consistently with time and space, magnetism has to appear. You don't get to choose it. That's why trying to remove magnetism breaks the rest of physics. And now something remarkable happens. The question, why do magnets work, quietly dissolves. Because magnets aren't doing anything special. They are revealing how space and time already behave when charges exist and causality must be preserved. This isn't a mechanism hiding underneath. There are no gears. As strings, no secret machinery waiting to be uncovered. This is the machinery. The universe isn't built from forces pushing on objects. It's built from constraints shaping what objects are allowed to do. Once you accept that, magnetism stops being mysterious, not because it becomes familiar, but because you finally stop demanding a picture the universe was never designed to give you. And the discomfort you feel right now, that's not confusion. That's your intuition being updated, whether it likes it or not. Now let's check whether this strange picture actually touches the real world, because if it doesn't, we should throw it away. Every time your phone tells you where you are, it's quietly testing this idea. Your GPS doesn't work by triangulating distances in space alone. It depends on clocks, extremely precise clocks, moving through different paths in space and time. Satellites high above Earth are moving fast and sitting in weaker gravity. Their clocks run differently than the ones in your phone, not slightly. Enough that, if you ignored it, your location would drift by kilometers each day. So engineers don't ask whether time dilation feels real. They correct for it because the universe demands it. Electric signals traveling through circuits, magnetic fields guiding those signals. Space and time quietly reshaping how motion is allowed. All of that is built directly into the technology you trust without thinking. Nothing magical, nothing philosophical, just reality enforcing its rules with no concern for your intuition. Your phone works because the universe is consistent, not because it's comfortable. And magnetism is part of that consistency, whether you find it satisfying or not. Once you see magnetism this way, it stops feeling like a force at all. It starts to feel like a rule. Not a rule written down somewhere, a rule the universe follows because it has no other option. Nothing is being pushed. Nothing is reaching out across space. Instead, reality is quietly insisting on consistency. Charges exist. Time exists. Causality must not break. And from those constraints alone, magnetism emerges. Not as a choice, but as a necessity. That's the unsettling part. We like to imagine forces as actors, doing things to each other. But magnetism isn't acting. It's enforcing. It's space and time refusing to let events contradict themselves. So, when two magnets pull together, what you're feeling isn't a mechanism at work. You're feeling the cost of keeping the universe logically intact. The deeper you go in physics, the fewer reasons you find, and the more you encounter structures that simply must be there. Magnetism isn't mysterious because it's hidden. It's disturbing because it's unavoidable. Once the universe allows charges to exist in space and time, this is what reality is forced to look like. And it doesn't ask whether you're comfortable with that. So the next time you push two magnets together, don't think of it as a trick. Nothing invisible is sneaking between them. Nothing is reaching out to grab the other side. What you're feeling is the same quiet structure that lets clocks disagree, that keeps causes from outrunning effects, that holds your body together without asking permission. You're not touching the magnet. You're touching the rules. And the unsettling part isn't it that we don't fully understand them. It's that they've been shaping every moment of your life, long before you ever thought to ask why.